and to close the site with us.
I think the feedback was you, maybe?
Yes, I apologize for that. So good evening, everyone. Board of Finance. So I'm pleased to present the Board of Education proposed budget alongside with Chair Kate Carey Troll, Vice Chair Heather Spencer, in addition with our Board of Education student rep Mariella Lukasic on the board's proposed budget tonight. So before we start, just a couple of things I'd like to reference. One, the budget booklet you received provides a narrative along with the local tax numbers. This can also be found on our Board of Ed webpage. Also tonight is not a page by page breakdown, but rather an overall summary of the proposed budget. And certainly we know that we'll have the opportunity when we have our budget workshop next week. So with that, I have our chair, Kate Carey Troll, take the lead.
This budget proposal is grounded in the priorities outlined in the Board of Education strategic plan with a focus on 4 key areas, including the portrait of the graduate. The portrait of the graduate extends across all grade levels, creating stronger connections between elementary, middle, and high school experiences. This approach ensures that students at every stage explore diverse choices and pathways aligned with their interests and passions, ultimately preparing them for a successful vocational life. The strategic plan also underscores the urgent need to address our outdated school facilities. Our buildings require significant upgrades and repairs to meet the demands of today's teaching and learning environments. This budget proposal reflects the necessary short-term maintenance investments, while larger capital and bonding needs continue to be addressed through the appropriate channel. We are encouraged by the recent progress made through the capital improvements projects and the productive discussions taking place with the Board of Selectmen ad hoc committee on town renovation projects. Finally, we remain committed on enhancing communication with the community, not only celebrating our school successes, but also being transparent about the challenges we face.
The portrait of the graduate represents the vision and commitment behind delivering a high-quality education from preschool through 12th grade. It captures the essence of the East Windsor Public Schools experience guiding the work we do in each of our schools. At the core of this vision is our dedication to implementing the Connecticut core standards alongside the portrait of the graduate. These rigorous standards shape our instruction and assessment practices, particularly in literacy, mathematics, and science. They ensure that we remain focused on delivering meaningful, skill-based learning experiences that prepare students for success. We continuously evaluate and refine all aspects of teaching and learning with the portrait of the graduate as our guiding principle. Our goal is for every East Windsor graduate, indeed every member of our community, to become an informed lifelong learner, a responsible citizen, and a self-aware individual. To achieve this, we invest in raising student performance by providing a high-quality, modern resources and ongoing professional development for our educators. These standards also inform our instructional budget proposals, shape our teacher evaluation goals, and drive the design of our programs and initiatives. Ultimately, this is what the portrait of the graduate is all about, ensuring that every student leaves East Windsor Public Schools prepared to thrive in an ever-changing world.
So the budget proposal you have is essential with supporting our pre-K through grade 12 priorities outlined in the portrait of the graduate while building on the meaningful work already underway, producing graduates that are lifelong learners, civic leaders, motivated problem solvers, responsible citizens, so much more. So as you can see by this slide, this is an extremely challenging budget. So led by our business office, this is no small feat to have been able to build this year's budget. So when you take a look at our current FY 25 operating budget, so our current budget we're in as far as the 24-25 school year that ends this June. It includes almost 700,000 with one-time and or expiring funds with ESSER and the 2% fund. So before we even roll over this budget into next year, as far as the FY 26, we've lost approximately 2.35% of the overall budget. Our current budget proposal is 6.34%. Which really means that this proposal is a 3.99% increase from our current operating budget once you remove the one-time funding, and thus also allowing what we currently have in place. We consider this a very modest increase when considering the factors directly related to the increases, which includes almost an 8% increase with special ed costs, 9.4% increases with medical insurance, and 6% increase with transportation. This budget proposal represents our needs, protecting the priorities that were mentioned in our strategic plan and the portrait of the graduate. I do want to be clear, this is a level service, not a level staffing budget. So we would be eliminating the positions of 5 special education pairs and 1 nurse. Based on need, I am recommending the reduction of these positions. As a reminder, we have eliminated positions in each of the last 3 years during my time as superintendent, while increasing services. I can tell you this is primarily because of the processes and procedures we have in place internally, along with the good work that our business office has been doing. It's for this reason we're able to reallocate and maximize the resources based on the changing needs of our students and community. So here's our budget at a glance. I know it's not particularly clear, at least not from my distance, but it is in your budget booklets. And again, this presentation is also on our Board of Ed webpage. So the numbers represented in each department represent the changes to the local budget. So grants and other revenue sources reduce the actual costs. So for example, if I use technology as an example, we've offset our technology budget the last 2 years with ESSER funds, which are now expired. So it may look like a significant increase to our technology budget, but our costs actually remain the same or even a slight reduction. What you're seeing is essentially the increase to the local budget once those revenues no longer exist. Within this budget proposal, we are strategically using what we currently project to have remaining at the end of the year with the 2% fund. Certainly, we understand that number is fluid based on where we are in the school year and where we end, but based on that projection, maximizing all the resources we have towards our needs. Increases to the curriculum cost center is a result of absorbing the teacher of the deaf services from Willie Ross that had previously been budgeted in the high school department. We moved it more in the curriculum aligned with where other such services can be found. There's also additional increases to service contracts and consumables, which is necessary to maintain the integrity of our instructional work previously spoken about. And then the primary driver to the district-wide is medical insurance. As I said earlier, that's 9.4% increase. That's based on the state health insurance plan. That is a firm number, and both the school district and the town participate in that plan. So this pie chart represents the budget at a different glance. The graph represents the local budget allocations to each department. This is how the local tax dollars are spread out across departments. So percents are rounded to the whole number. I know band, because band is less than 1% of the entire budget and the number is rounded down. I know it shows up at 0%. There is money in the proposal on band. We do plan to continue it. It's just how the numbers are rounded to the nearest percent. Salaries are embedded in each department and they make up 65% of the total budget. So for example, middle school within that, our teacher salaries that work at the middle school, paraprofessionals, clerical staff and such, their salaries are embedded in that department. Same thing for high school, Broadbrook. Special education, those salaries and those staff who work across buildings, their salaries would be embedded within the special education department. Special education, as you can see, is 25% of the total budget, which I can tell you is right in the middle of state averages. And it's not unusual when you consider that special education touches every aspect of the school system, beginning at preschool and all the way to age 22 for those students that require transition services. So putting the budget in perspective, again, I would recommend if you don't have a paper copy to take a look at the website on the presentation, or if your eyes are better than mine, maybe you can see the numbers. But the total cost of education in this proposal is $31.99 million. After offsetting grants and revenues, the budget in this proposal is approximately $29.34 million. And then when you use the projected remaining balance of the 2% fund, it brings the budget to $29.07. And then you can see that the additional funds in adult ed and the state educational cost sharing grants further reduce taxpayer liability in an effort to lower the mill rate. So ultimately, our students receive an education in this proposal at almost $32 million at just over a 26% discount due to outside funding resources. So hopefully this slide really just puts it in perspective as far as the numbers, the funding, and the tax liability. As a reminder, the budget remains fluid, as I know this group is very well aware. These key factors here will continue to be monitored and certainly be the key drivers with any significant changes. We certainly hope that our end of the year projections increase, our special ed needs reduce, thus giving us greater flexibility, but those numbers could also increase as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Board of Education, Student Rep Mariella Lukasic, who will now speak to how the budget supports our students and community from the K to 12 student perspective.
At East Windsor High School, every student has the opportunity to thrive, whether in academics, athletics, the arts, or through community service. The programs and experiences made possible by the school budget empower us to dream big, achieve personal goals, and contribute to the broader community. Athletics. Despite being a small school, our athletic teams consistently compete at the highest levels. Every team has qualified for state-level competition, a remarkable feat that defies stereotypes often associated with smaller schools. Our cross-country team sent its entire roster of 7 athletes to both the conference and state championships. In track and field, 3 athletes earned all-conference titles during this year's indoor championship, and 1 relay team qualified as well. 5 athletes went on to represent our school at the state championships. Beyond team success, individual opportunities have flourished. I personally have had the opportunity to participate in the pentathlon and heptathlon, as well as weight throw championships, breaking school records in both the weight throw and pentathlon, and placing 16th in the East in the pentathlon. All special opportunities made possible by the budget. Among our graduating seniors, 3 athletes will continue their careers at the next level. Bailey Winter will play basketball for a prep school. Jack Kitchens will run cross country, track and field at Wheaton College, and Giovanni Carter will play Division II football at American International College. These achievements reflect the power of school funding to foster growth and open doors. Meaningful community engagement. The National Honor Society supported my project this year as one of several service projects, helping to construct a shot put landing area, a project I initially thought was a long shot, no pun intended. However, thanks to over $1,300 in donations from community members and a grant that I received through the National Association, the project quickly became feasible. Several athletes from all 3 spring sports teams actively assisted my partner and I with the construction. On Saturday, an East Windsor student working for CJN Landscaping thatched and mowed the area to prepare it for the next phase. That same day, the National Honor Society hosted a cannon bottle drive, raising more than $1,000. Dozens of community members stopped by to donate bottles, cans, a few dollars, supporting all of our personal projects and service dues, which fund initiatives like Habitat for Humanity. Last year, this funding allowed us to help build homes for homeless families in Hartford. We laid floor. It was very grueling, but it was so much fun. Looking ahead, the NHS will be hosting an Easter egg hunt on April 13th for elementary age children, funded by our proceeds from the Can Drive. Additionally, as a part of the Safe School Leaders Group through high school guidance, students, including myself, have visited the elementary and middle schools each semester, reading to students and inspiring them to become lifelong learners over the past 2 years. Arts and music. Despite our small size, the performing arts at EWHS continue to shine. Recent funding has enabled the Drama Club to host productions that consistently fill the auditorium, with around 30 student participants in each show, whether they are acting or doing lights or doing set. Our music program continues to achieve excellence, with the jazz band winning first place in both the concert and marching bands earning second place at the Music in the Parks competition in Hershey, Pennsylvania. These experiences show that dedication, supported by school funding, can lead to outstanding achievements regardless of the school's size. This year, students participated in college tours and attended a college fair during Think About Your Future Week, an initiative that introduced many of us to college campuses for the first time. These experiences sparked new ambitions, with students researching colleges, exploring application processes, and envisioning post-secondary opportunities. Field trips like these, made possible by the school budget, broaden our horizons and encourage us to reach beyond what we thought was possible. The greatest strength of our school lies in the connections we form with our teachers and staff. In this close-knit community, every student is known and supported. Teachers go above and beyond, whether it's Mr. Masters waking up at 7 in the morning to help me with NHS fieldwork or staying late to assist with our projects. Guidance counselors like Ms. Walker, who are always available, even responding to late night emails to offer reassurance. Or staff members like Ms. Corbin, who brighten each day with a welcoming smile, making school feel safe and familiar. These relationships, fostered by a well-supported school environment, create a network of encouragement that helps us succeed, not just academically, but personally. This fall, I will be attending my dream school, Northeastern University, to study biology and data sciences with a concentration in developmental and stem cell biology. Gaining acceptance to a university with a 5.2% acceptance rate felt nearly impossible just months ago. But with hard work, determination, and the support of my teachers and school community, I was able to achieve it. The day after receiving my acceptance, past and present teachers celebrated with me, demonstrating the unwavering support system that has shaped my journey. My success is a direct result of the opportunities and guidance provided by this district, proof that a small town school can empower students to achieve big dreams. Investing in our schools means continuing to provide students with the resources, experience, and support that make these achievements possible through our school budget. Thank you.
On behalf of the Board of Education, we certainly respect the work and difficult decisions you have ahead, and we look forward to our work together next week at the workshop. So thank you.
Thanks.
Oh.
Yeah, okay. You know, I'm going to start off with a medium-length presentation on PowerPoints, followed by a brief history of time, followed by a 30 slide PowerPoint. I do love my PowerPoints. All right, so this is the same format that I've used for a couple of years now. I like it because it does a relatively good job of comparing East Windsor to other communities and laying out what's changed in our budget relative to those communities that are similar to us. That, by the way, is a picture of the new playground for anybody who's not familiar with it. That was the day that we did the ribbon cutting last June. Next year, when I'm here presenting the budget, there will be a picture of the grand opening or building dedication from the new community center, which is tentatively scheduled for June 20th. So we are very, very excited about that. So again, I'm going to start doing a town by town comparison of towns in our region, comparing East Windsor against things like population, grand lists, mill rates, and local tax levies. What you're not going to see in here is comparing things like they're comparing towns like Enfield or South Windsor or Manchester or East Hartford to the town of East Windsor, because they're not comparable to us. They're just not the same. So I've got the 10 comparable communities that we use for things like collective bargaining negotiations, that I'm going to show how we stack up against them. Really trying to identify communities of interest here. So we're going to use the towns of Canton, Coventry, East Windsor, Granby, Somers, Stafford, Suffield, and Windsor Locks. Those are the towns that are closest to us in terms of pure population. Turning to grand lists, and I think I made those big enough so you can read it, but the grand list is the totality of the taxable property, real, personal, and motor vehicle that any given municipality in Connecticut is able to tax against. It's the basis for property taxation and for funding of our local governments for the most part. As you can clearly see, we are neck and neck with Windsor Locks in terms of taxable property in our community. One thing that would change substantially in terms of comparing East Windsor and Windsor Locks is if you were also to include pilot funding. They get about $10 million more than the town of East Windsor does because they host the airport. So they're able to support their overall budget at a higher rate than we are, even though our taxable properties are substantially similar. Next, looking at mill rates. This represents the current year's mill rates amongst our comparable communities. As you all know, the mill rate is the amount of that we charge per $1,000 of value to each taxable piece of property. Our mill rate is second lowest of any of the comparable communities that we use and would continue to be if the budgets as presented by the boards of selectmen and education were adopted as is. We would still be the second lowest mill rate amongst our comparable communities. Next up, looking at total local taxes generated to fund the budgets of each of these communities. This is again exclusive of any state funding that any municipality may receive. It doesn't include things like ECS or pilot or PQAT. It is purely what is derived from local tax. As you can see, we rank 7th out of 10 in terms of our comparable communities, with the highest of those towns being the town of Granby. The higher the ranking, the more expensive it is for local taxpayers to support the services that those communities provide. So Windsor ranks 7th out of 10. Makes us on the more affordable side. This chart is a little busy, but this shows the distribution of dollars throughout the local government this year, as well as where it's requested to go next year. The Board of Education is requesting an increase of $1.73 million, and the town is requesting an increase of about $840,000. And that sticks pretty close to the distribution of funds that we've typically enjoyed here, which is 60% of the total operating budget for the town goes to support the Board of Education, 40% goes to support the town government. That's been kind of the norm in East Windsor for the 20 years I've been involved. Broken out by total local government function, you can see here that the dollars associated with each of these functions of government, education, general government, public safety, public works, community services, debt and capital, employee benefits, and contingency funds. And the distribution of dollars is pretty much unchanged from previous years. Within the town government, we get, again, we get 40% of the total town funds. 14 of that 40% goes to the general government functions, 24% to public safety, 23% to public works, 6% to community services, 12% to debt and capital, 20% to employee benefits, and 1% to contingency. So first we'll dig into the comparisons of general government spending. So East Windsor ranks, where do we rank here? East Windsor ranks general government relative to our comparable communities 6th out of 10. So we're right in the middle of the pack in terms of funding for general government functions. This is that chart that I used to show where the distribution of the funds within the general government go. So this is 11% of the 14% goes to support the treasurer's office as an example. 6% of the 14% goes to support the town clerk's office. This function includes most of the departments that are located in town hall, most of the boards and commissions that we service, our activities and fees, our legal costs, our property insurance, and most of the list is outlined there. Anything that didn't spike at 2% or more isn't shown. So that's why if you were to add those numbers up, you're not going to get to the true 100%. The ethics commissioner, the zoning board of appeals just doesn't have a large enough share of the budget to display without this getting totally crazy. This chart shows the change in funding within this function of government over time. FY 23-24, the middle column is I'm sorry, 24-25 is our current year spending. And then the three columns to the right of that show what the department heads requested, what I recommended, and what the Board of Selectmen approved. The board is requesting an increase here over last year of $112,608. And that's apportioned out amongst all of those different departments or boards or functions that we're talking about. This chart shows the distribution of funds between the functions in the public safety cluster. Public safety is our police department, emergency management, the building department, the police commission, and communications. Far and away, the largest piece of what we spend on public safety, as you would imagine, is our police department. They make up about 93% of the total spend, followed by the building department, communications, emergency management, and the police commission in that order. Important note here, we have a number of contracts that are out right now. Our supervisor's contract is still out in negotiations. Our police union contract is going to be out as of July 1st. And our clerical contract is going to be out as of July 1st. So the only employees in this entire cluster that are currently in contract are our police dispatchers and the police administration. Everybody else who works in this area is currently out of contract. One thing I'd point out that has been the topic of some discussion amongst the Board of Selectmen over the last couple of weeks is the communications line. This has been something we've talked quite a bit about because the costs there have really changed on us in the last couple of years due to a number of causes. But we went from paying Talon County Dispatch $40,050 in FY 23-24 to $26,000 in the current year. And working with Chief Carl and Deputy Chief Murphy, as well as the leadership team from Talon County, we got their requested ask of a $68,000 cost this year, down to $49,426 for next year. So almost a $20,000 reduction off of what the initial bill had been. We're expecting to sign a one-year contract with them in the short term. And hopefully maintain things as status quo moving forward. But throughout this exercise, we now know that there are less costly alternatives that are available. So if the price continues to balloon, we'll be able to revisit that in the out years. Taking a quick second to talk about the police department. You'll notice here I'm only comparing us against 5 other towns instead of 9 other towns. The reason being those towns that I took off of this slide have a resident trooper model, which is a police service that's largely subsidized by the state, and they're very small and rural towns. So they don't really compare well to what our town actually requires. East Windsor and Windsor Locks are the 2 most expensive police departments. They are comparable in size. We're also comparable in terms of highway access points and location between Hartford and Springfield. Policing is expensive, but I think we're getting what we pay for, and I want to make sure I'm showing where those dollars are in relation to East Windsor. Out of the 6 towns that we're comparing against here, East Windsor is second out of 6. There is some possibility that after those contracts are resolved, we'll be closer to or actually first overall. Again, looking at the spending trends year over year, we're requesting that we fund all of our public safety at a $79,814 increase over last year. But again, I want to remind you that that's not inclusive of contractual obligations that are currently out, and that number will rise substantially once those contracts are negotiated. Couple of notable items that are preserved in this budget, or included in this budget. We are preserving the funding to run the active shooter training that we did back in November. That was an all-discipline, all-day drill, utilizing East Windsor Middle School, to make sure that we had all of our emergency services practicing in a live environment for things like, active shooter response, chemical spills. There was a scenario where somebody drove a stolen car with guns into a public building, and all of the disciplines had to respond. The intention initially was that this would be something that we would fund every other year. But that was such an overwhelming success. And to see that unfold in real time, there is just, this is something we should continue to do on an annual basis. That was really an unqualified success. I'd also like to note that included in both the IT budget and the planning and building departments, is funding to implement a new project software. They're looking to convert away from our current vendor, which is called PermitLink, onto a new, more at least back-end user-friendly, if not front-end user-friendly as well, system called Cloud. That's something that we'll be talking about at the Board of Selectmen probably next. Moving on to Public Works, we rank 5th out of 10 in terms of spending on this function, which includes Public Works, sanitation, roads, town property, and the permanent building commission. So what you see there, the blue lines are what municipalities are paying for sanitation costs. The orange lines are what they're paying for the rest of the functions within the Public Works cluster. The one thing that jumps right out at you, I'm sure, is that Coventry has no blue line. They do get rid of trash. Suffield the same way. They do get rid of trash. We just were not able to get what their annual costs were. So I could have just taken them off the sheet, I guess, but I wanted to show kind of what. I will say that our tipping fees for our trash hauling is at about $106 a ton, which when I have conversations through CROG or CCM or KERMA or COST with other municipal CEOs, they're talking in the 130s. Some of them are touching $140 a ton. So our rate is pretty good, and I tend to just kind of like slink down and hope nobody asks what we're spending or how we got that deal. So, but garbage is a growing problem, and the more you get rid of it, the more you have to have someplace to put it. It's a problem that needs a statewide solution, and there is not. So this shows the distribution of funding within the Public Works functions, pretty evenly distributed between sanitation, Public Works, and town properties, with the balance of the funds being spent on road. But it's a pretty even distribution between those three cost centers. Overall, the Public Works function is asked to increase by $440,000. And I'm sorry, $440,000 is used for roads, and that's what's in the current budget. That's the 10% number there. Public Works is going to go up by $227,000 over the current year, not 440, 227. This is driven by step and contractual increases for employees in the Public Works Department, increased costs for vehicle maintenance in town properties, building repair costs, trash disposal costs, and most significantly by what our reasonable best guesses are for what our electric costs are going to be. And at the time that this was put together, what our water costs were going to be, but we do have that number now, what the water rates are going to be. So maybe we can update you guys when we talk about town properties. The thing with electric is, as everybody knows, electric prices have gone stupid. And we entered into a 4-year deal, the town and the Board of Education, about 4 years ago, that locked in our per kilowatt rate at 8.44 cents per kilowatt. That was a pretty good rate then. It's probably not a rate that we're going to get again, just because, again, Eversource has gone all Eversource. But we know what our rate is going to be for the first half of the year. That contract expires on December 31st. So we have guesstimated as best as we can where we think the rates will be for the second half of the fiscal year. We could be close. We could be wildly off one way or the other, and we won't know until it's time to put that contract out, which when we entered into this last time, Patrick, I think you were superintendent.
I think it was my first year.
Yeah, they give us instructions. The vendor that we use to sign the contract gives us instructions that you are to be at your desk between the hours of 1 and 4, because if you don't sign the contract between 1 and 4, the rate won't hold. So we really are just guessing with what our electric costs are going to be right now, as best as we're able. Now we'll look at community services. Community services, as it compares in functions, we rank 5th out of 10 towns. We're right in the middle in terms of funding to support these programs. This again shows what's included in community services. It's our senior services, our elderly commission, our historical commission, parks and recreation, libraries, and social services. Overall, the function funding within community services is set to decrease in total by about $5,000. There are some modest increases in senior services for programs and supplies. Social services is going down by almost $28,000. That represents the local funding for the Youth Services Bureau, and we're not doing away with that program. The hope had been that we would have enough data to support turning that part-time position into a full-time position. But just as it was difficult to recruit somebody on a part-time basis, it also proved to be difficult to retain them on a part-time basis. So we didn't have, her name was Quinice Jones. We didn't have Quinice with us long enough to aggregate enough data to make a justified ask for turning that into a full-time position. So instead, we took the funding and we moved it over into the police salary line where it's supporting, and this is happening now in the current fiscal year already. It's supporting the work that's being done by the community services officer, who is doing things associated with the Youth Services Bureau, with the local prevention council, with the JRB, with the community court. So it really supports a portion of her salary that is she's already doing. So it seemed to be more prudent to say, we'll use this to support the added police officer that you all included in the budget last year, versus me having to stand here and make an ask for a full-time position that I don't have data to support. While I'm on community services, I will say, and I talked about this last year, I'm going to talk about it again, I'm going to talk about it again next year and probably the year after that, is that we very badly in this town need a geriatric social worker. There's got to be a way that we can work together to figure out how to provide those services, because we do have a population in East Windsor that is older than Hartford County on average. And we have people who are at high risk of being taken advantage of, at fraud, at scams, at not being able to access Social Security because of changes that are happening in Washington, not being able to get on heating assistance or renter's rebate, and they need it. We don't have a position that is established to do those functions. At some point, that is something that we have to do. I'm not sure that that's something that's doable this year or next year, but I'm going to keep talking about it and keep trying to find a way to do it until we can take care of that population. Talking briefly about education, you can see here that East Windsor, with the changes that were made by the Board of Education in their spending request, we have climbed out of the cellar, and East Windsor now would rank 9th out of 10 in terms of funding for educational services in our comparable communities. But the Board of Education workshop process, the recommendation that was put forward would have still maintained us as the lowest funding town for educational purposes in any of our comparable communities. And that had been that way for quite some time. So it's nice to see that we are climbing out now. We're now ahead of Summers. Looking at debt, we see that East Windsor again ranks last out of 10 towns in terms of debt funding, which is a good news, bad news circumstance. On the one hand, we have very little outstanding debt, which is good. But on the other hand, it suggests that the town continues to defer long-term capital improvements, long-term capital costs that we need to maintain our aging infrastructure. And that will come back to bite us at some point, because it's always cheaper to fix something now than it is to fix it later. And that's why the work that's been done through the ad hoc committee and through the Board of Education and through our consultants is important for the town to be considerate of, because we ought to be somewhere around $3 million in terms of debt service, and we're at 981. We're really going to spend about 600,000. So we are not keeping up with our investments the way that we need to be. And the conversations that are happening at the ad hoc committee will go a long way towards addressing our major capital needs in the very near term. One of the other things that holds this function back is the town's trepidation around the 2% cap that's in the charter. Adhering to that for too many years has now put us in a position where not only are we not growing our operating budget to keep up with the costs of the real world, but we are not growing our operating budget sufficiently so that we have a large enough debt service to be able to borrow against what the needs of the town are. We have debt capacity far in excess of what we are able to get to because we are not funding debt service we're not funding our overall town budget at a high enough level to get debt service where it needs to be. And Amy's got a very good presentation she can share with you guys in the budget process if you'd like about what those restrictions are, why it's a problem, and kind of where we go next. So the debt function includes not just debt service, but it also includes our capital improvements. A few years ago, we did reallocate a couple $100,000 out of debt service after we did a ballot question to pay off outstanding debt. And we decided to put that into capital improvement projects for a couple of reasons. First of all, capital improvement projects were always the first thing that got cut budgetarily, and it became another one of those things where we were just falling further and further behind. But secondly, we wanted to preserve that debt service funding availability in the budget, but not commit it to operating expenses, because when we do go out to bond, we want to make sure that that's funding that's available to offset what the impact on taxpayers is going to be. So it made sense to take that money and put it into capital improvements, which is annualized one-time expenses. One other thing that I'll say about this is the town at the annual town meeting adopted the CIP's capital plan. I think it's $2.1 million in project asks. We adopted the capital plan in total, but assigned no dollar signs to it. So we now have an adopted capital plan that allows us to use excess funds and transfer it over to approved projects ready to go. What that does is it also allows us to access the new way that the state is administering LoCIP, local capital improvement. It used to be that you would apply for a project, they would tell you if it was a qualifying project, and then you could use LoCIP dollars against it. They changed that, so you don't have to ask permission first, but you do need to be doing your LoCIP projects against your approved capital improvement plan. So it was important for the town to then have a fully adopted plan so that when funding became available, we could use those LoCIP dollars and accomplish some of the projects on that list. The next slide will actually show kind of how that has played out. So in addition to moving funding between debt service and capital improvements, the town's fund balance is also in a very healthy place, as you guys know. Interest rates have been quite high for a while, and we've run surpluses in each of the last few years on the town side. All of this combined has allowed us to make more and meaningful investments in these capital projects beyond what has been budgeted at the $900,000 level. And that's why what you're seeing here in 21-22, we spent $3.2 million. In 22-23, we spent $3.2 million. In 23-24, we spent $4.7 million. The track costs and some of the other end of the year stuff that we did are in the $2.1 million that we did last year. Those numbers are in excess of what we have budgeted because there has been additional available funding from savings on expenditures and from increased revenues associated with interest on investments. That has allowed us to kind of catch up more on capital projects than we typically would have been able to do. And what have we been able to do with that? We've replaced roofs on buildings. We've replaced emergency generators. I mentioned the track. We replaced the water line at the middle school, the gym ceiling, the elementary school, and the chimney is still going on now. We've matched nearly $1 million for the replacement of the town's emergency radio system, against which our state delegation was able to get us an $8 million state bond. We've made additional road improvements, things like that, all of which we would not have been able to do without taking this approach to how we attack our capital costs. So turning now to benefits, East Windsor ranks 3rd out of 10 in terms of benefit spending, which is unchanged from our ranking from last year. The benefits includes the 27th payroll, the employee share of FICA, our pension costs, 401A and 457 contributions, our OPEB funds, tuition reimbursements, unemployment compensation, workers' compensation, health insurance, heart and hypertension, and employment physicals. The function is going to increase by approximately $180,000 over last year, which is driven by increased costs in the 27th payroll, which is a normal part of that 9-year cycle. It goes up incrementally each year for 9 years, and then it drops off entirely based on how many days in excess of 26 pay periods are in the fiscal year. We're also seeing higher costs around our 401 and 457 contributions, and as Dr. Keaton said, healthcare is the major cut. We had been initially told to budget 10 to 12%. Then they said, really, we mean 10 to 12%. And then they came back and they said, it's probably going to be 9.5%. So that's the numbers that are in our health insurance line represent the true cost for health insurance as we understand them for all current employees. And then we also budget for vacancies that we have, and we have a handful right now. We budget for vacancies to come on at the expense of a full family premium share. So there's a little bit of flex there depending on who gets hired, but we won't know until those positions are filled. We're also seeing our pension costs go down from last year by about $25,000. It's going to be a true up number against what it should have been this year, but we actually over budgeted this year, so we're going to right size that. Contingency fund. Okay, so this is another interesting one. You'll see in FY 21-22 that there is $0, 23-24 that there is $0, and then there's a little bit in 23. There's a little bit left in this year, and then there's a whole lot of money requested next year. That's because the contingency fund, which includes non-negotiated wages for town employees and a true contingency, as that money gets spent down over the course of the year, it's reallocated out of the contingency line and apportioned to where it needs to go on a department by department basis. So that's the difference between actual and revised. You'll see that number again, that 257 will come way down when we settle the supervisor's contract, the police contract, and the clerical contract. And those costs will be apportioned out to each of the department with those employees. So they'll become true budgets moving forward. So that's the expense side. I'm now going to take a look at the grand list and revenues. I'll do the brief history of time and sit down. This is a 5-year look at our grand list history. The grand list year that we will be using to collect the FY 25-26 tax levy is the grand list that was completed on October 1st of 2024. The significant jump you see between the 22 grand list and the 23 grand list represents the implementation of property revaluation. Our values went up a little more than 40% that year. But you will see that we're up almost another $50 million over last year, which is good, healthy growth. That is tied mostly to gravel pit solar. Once again, the grand list is the total taxable property against which the town can support its government functions. So we have now had sustained grand list growth every year since at least 2019. So revenues. We did make a number of assumptions about revenues, although those are the purview of the Board of Finance exclusively. They were part of the discussions that were held at the staff level, held with Amy and I, and then held with the Board of Selectmen. Because of the overall health of our fund balance, we are assuming continued use of the $1.2 million from that fund balance. We are again over the 20% cap, so that seems to be holding. This use of the fund balance remains the only way that we are legally allowed to return funds back to taxpayers. So it seems also a prudent and fair thing to do. We are increasing our accrued interest on our investments by $200,000 and on tax delinquencies by another $120,000. And we're adjusting upward our assumption about prior year collections by $240,000. These are based on many years of trends, particularly concerning the delinquency tax collections. Our previous tax collector very much under budgeted that, so she would make sure that she made her budget. But the historical actuals showed that increasing it to the number that we have would be much closer to consistency year over year. Due to the reduced hours at the snack bar at the park, we are seeing a reduction in revenue there of $8,000. We are assuming no changes in excess cost funding, although that you don't really know until the legislature adopts a budget, which isn't until after we adopt ours, which is helpful. The most important piece of revenue that I want to share is that in the previous biennium, or the biennium that we're currently in at the state level, the state included an additional $1 million for the town of East Windsor in Pequot funds to offset the development of the East Windsor Casino. The sports betting legislation that passed in 21 precluded that parcel from being developed as a gaming facility until 2031. It did not preclude it from being developed as anything else until 2031, only a gaming facility. But the property owners, the Mashantuckets, the Mohicans, are not interested in developing at all. In fact, they're not even interested in sitting down at a table together and talking about what to do with it. So in the interim, the legislature in the current biennium approved an extra $1 million in Pequot funds. Governor Lamont included that in his budget recommendation that he released in February. That is big news for the town of East Windsor, and I was very glad to see that included. So things have changed a little bit since Dr. Tudor and I presented our budgets to our respective boards. At that time, the town side of the budget was to increase by 4.62%. That number now, that's an error on this. Is 4.81%. Dr. Tudor's recommendation for public schools was an increase of 5.44%. That number now is 6.34%. Those are increases of about $55,000 on the town side and about $240,000 on the school side. The mill rate increase is now 0.63 mils. That's an increase over the 0.37 that we had initially back in February. A home assessed at $400,000 would see their property taxes increased by $181 or $15 a month. By contrast, and I just got this information today by happenstance, I was talking with Chris Selectman from Summers, and he shared some information. He actually called specifically talks on budget and how things were looking here. And Summers is expecting a mill rate increase of 1.25 mils. Ellington is expecting a mill rate increase of 2 mils. Stafford is expecting a mill rate increase of 4 mils. We're sitting right now today at 0.63 mils, which is, by contrast from those towns around us, pretty healthy condition to get started in. So that's where we are. I think everyone recognizes that while the work of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education pertaining to the budget is done, you guys are just getting started, and I will be more than happy to help however I can.
Thank you, Jason. That opens us up to our public participation. If anyone needs to speak on our budget, just please state your name and your address. Go ahead.
James Carter, 108 Main Street in Wells Point. First, want to comment on the town by town comparison. I'm not sure that that's completely accurate, because I didn't see any fire services items that were in there. In this town, you have another $2.5 million in fire services. That people pay for, so you have to recognize that. And on the dispatching side, I'll give you a little history. Years ago, the fire departments were dispatched by the police department. Didn't work out. We went to a fire EMS dispatch center. The two departments split that cost for many years. A couple of years actually, when Kim Lord was here, the town actually took over the fire EMS part. Because everybody really, fire service and EMS service is a function of it needs to be provided. So in dispatching, it needs to be provided. The police department handles police dispatching. Fire department, EMS dispatching is a lot more cumbersome than a police dispatching area. And that's due to mutual aid companies coming in with volunteer departments. We have to get several mutual aid companies. We have to go to other towns. It's a lot of work. So that's why we made it split. So Allen County used to charge per capita for the town. That's how we split it up. But they don't do that anymore. They charge per call. That's because East Windsor is using 25% of the services out of town and town. So it wasn't fair. The per capita wasn't justifying the use of the center. So they came up with another funding mechanism when it's gonna be per call. So East Windsor does almost 3,000 calls a year. A lot of them are ambulance calls, which was mentioned earlier because we do have an older population. So the fact that we're saying that the town's portion, and I don't even know if it should be the town's portion, but Broadbrook Fire Department, Warehouse Point Fire Department pay for the calls that they go to. Well, we're also paying for 450 calls that the ambulance goes to. So that's where the savings to the town went. It just got put on the fire departments, which it has been for years. So there isn't really a savings there. In my opinion, that's a function of the town. The town should actually think about paying that whole 90,000 for the fire EMS dispatch. Because that way, all the residents would pay the same amount. Right now, I pay a portion out of my town taxes for the East Windsor ambulance. And then I pay another portion out for the Warehouse Point Fire District. Whereas Broadbrook people, taxpayers, pay a portion out of their town taxes for the East Windsor ambulance, then a different rate for the Broadbrook Fire Department dispatches. And I think you really need to look at that because East Windsor ambulance does 5,000 calls a year. To put 5,000 calls into the police dispatch center, granted, they can probably handle it. They usually only have one dispatcher on. When you add 5,000 calls to that dispatch center, somebody's gonna be there asking for more dispatchers. And when that happens, instead of paying the 90,000 to the other dispatch center that handles fire and EMS, we're gonna be paying 200 to 300,000 to put more dispatchers on. And I don't wanna see that happen. Thank you.
At this time, I have to leave. I have to relinquish the chair to my vice chairman. I have a prior commitment at 8 o'clock tonight, so I'm gonna step out and he'll continue the public hearing and the rest of the meeting for us tonight. So I will be here tomorrow with our continuing budget workshops. Tom, all yours.
Any other questions or comments? Public participation? Go ahead.
I want to say, I have a unique perspective of being on the Board of Education and also being a parent in town here. Made me cry, it's just like simple stuff, you know, and it's just great to see because, you know, for years, I feel like our schools were maybe not going in the right direction and they are definitely going in the right direction now. I can see it as a parent, I can see it as the data I see of the Board of Education. I encourage everyone to come to some of those meetings or if they're online now, just so you can see the things that we're accomplishing and the way that we're going. And I just think it's so important that we continue that because this is an example of what we get when we support our children and when we fund our schools appropriately. I realize it's not inexpensive, but that's the world that we live in. And we're definitely not asking for the budget to be adding things. We're just asking to be able to maintain what we have so we can continue to go in this direction. You know, I just cannot even say how proud I am that we have students doing this. We have students going everywhere, all sorts of places. I know we list them at the end of the year when the kids are graduating about what schools they're going to, technical schools, private colleges, and it's something to be proud of. And honestly, there's some of the things I hear about the accomplishments, I don't even know about them. So I really think it's good that people in the community could see, hear, get more involved in what we're doing and the programs that we're providing for our students. I really ask that you support us and let that go to the community and let them decide whether they want to support that increase or not, and let them have a chance to decide for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Francis Neal, 153 Melrose Road, Broadbrook. I just want to say I totally and completely agree with what Terry said. My kids, I have one just graduated last year. I have two kids in the school district. And I have seen over the years how hard these people work. And they have, in some instances, begged and dragged one of my kids to get through to help him out because he was having troubles. And I don't think he would have made it without them. That's with support from his parents, but his classmates are all gone on to, you know, one's going to be a technician in a BMW to be able to fix all BMW cars. Another one's going to be a rocket scientist. And it's East Windsor School is where they got their education. And I've got my daughter in 5th grade, my other son is in 9th grade, and I would like to see them be able to at least have what their oldest brother had, and if not more, because I don't know if anybody here came to our the jazz, the what do they call it? The music all town pop concert. It was phenomenal, honestly, to hear the high school band play. Even the little 4th, 5th, 6th grade band was great. From a parent's perspective, it was fantastic. Those kids were brave enough to get up there, speak some speaking parts, sing some singing parts, and just play their off keys and just keep going and finish the thing. And it's not something that we had before. And these are funds. Dr. Tudrin has worked very hard with the finance director, and they have moved things around and rearranged and juggled to try to keep what we have for the kids they currently have without losing anything. And just to make sure that there is coverage for every kid. And I mean, this to me is a vision of what No Child Left Behind should have been. And I would like to see it continue. And I hope that you guys support it and put it out to the town as it stands. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing no more, I'm.
Tom, it's Noreen Farmer. I don't know if I can participate via Zoom or not.
Go for it, Noreen.
Go ahead.
Hi, Noreen Farmer, 247 South Water Street. I just want to reiterate what both Fran and Carrie said relative to education, and I also want to speak to the town side and everything that Jason presented. Both of these budgets are something that we as a community need. And I I know the pain that you all are going to go through. I spent a lot of years sitting on that side of the table. And I know that you're always faced with that 2% issue. And which is a very difficult place for you guys to be. From the education side of it, I just want to let you know that in the going on 4 years that I've been on the Board of Education, for quite a while, things were not looking wonderful for our kids prior to the current administration. With the administration that's currently in place and with the Board of Education that's been in place for the past several years, we've made real strides in improving from the perspective of being really working groups. We've instituted subcommittees that do a lot of work, that look at curriculum on an ongoing basis. We look at our financials on an ongoing basis. We have athletic subcommittees that are now functioning. We have policy committees that are doing a vast amount of work, all of which is being done in order to give our kids the best that we can give them. And unfortunately, from an educational perspective, sometimes it's hard to see the results of those things, but they truly are there. We have implemented curriculum changes in our elementary school, starting in our elementary school at the earliest ages, which are showing real results so that our kids are on where they need to be so that as they continue through, and we're making that curriculum grow with them as they go. We're trying to bring back a lot of the programs that got canceled, like drama programs and art programs, and instituting full-time art teachers at our high school, because it's vitally important to children that they have well-rounded educations. And I think a lot of times it is really hard to see because, as I said before, it's really easy to crash the plane, but it's really hard to build it back up with those pieces that crashed. And we're really working hard. And what you see in that budget, which when you look at 6.33% is quite shocking, it absolutely is the money we need to continue with the improvements that are ongoing, that we will see results from as it continues. And honestly, there were some things we probably could have put in there that we didn't put in there because we really have to be cognizant of the taxpayer. But it really is working, and we need to be able to continue the work that's been put in, and we need to continue working hard as an administration and a Board of Education to make sure that we have these ongoing discussions and understandings. So I'm asking you to please leave both side budgets intact. I know it's difficult for some people, but the increase to our taxes from both sides of this benefits our community as a whole. And it benefits our home value prices and benefits us in so many ways. And I just hope that you can see clear to at least put it out there and see what happens. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Denise.
Because somebody always says all the stuff that I would be saying anyway, but nobody talked about this. Certainly, we have worked so hard, the Board of Education, the devoted staff that we have, to get a budget and programs in place to make us proud of our school system and produce productive adults at every level. We have doctors that have graduated from our schools. We have we do a great job, and it would be great if we could continue exactly as we are. But and Jason, you're the one that brought it up tonight, capital improvements. I'm gonna put that hat on for a minute. I'm not gonna even talk about registrars because registrars are just gonna stay the way they are, I hope. With capital improvements, every year, the Capital Improvement Committee recommends a much higher number than what is actually budgeted. I've been on the Board of Finance and the selectmen. And I understand how at the end of the time, you say we have to cut something and it ends up capital. To Jason's, to the Board of Selectmen, to the Board of Finance's credit, you have found other ways to fund a lot of capital. But what that does is it funds it from another place and never adds it under the capital line in the budget. So that continues to stay a very low number instead of somehow finding a way to take that extra money and put it toward the capital improvements in the budget so that next year, when we're asking for 2 million again, it doesn't look like such a huge increase because at the end of the day, it's truly what was spent anyway. So I hope you can somehow have that kind of a discussion where you properly fund capital improvements because it's a lot and we have a lot to maintain and it's not going to go away.
Any other comments or questions? I guess I'm entertaining a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Close the public hearing first. Yeah, make a motion to close the public hearing. I think we have to do that.
Oh, man.
Second.
Make a motion to close, yes.
Yeah. First
And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
we have to agree that we can all say aye on the public hearing part.
Yes. No, we just, they. Adjourn.
All right, now I'll make a motion to adjourn. Sure.
Make a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for. Thanks for I didn't know.